The chamber was cold and white. Veltar sat in the metal chair, his forearms shaking slightly. The bright lights above made his gray skin look even paler. Across from him, 3 members of the Galactic Council waited with their recording devices. "Ready? Tell us what happened," said Counselor Keth, her voice gentle but firm. "Tell us about the humans." Veltar closed his large black eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, they were filled with something the Council had never seen before in a Catherian warrior. Fear. "You want to know about the humans," Veltar said slowly. "You want to know why the greatest empire in the galaxy now hides in the far corners of space. You want to know why we tell our children stories about monsters that look like us but fight like demons." He paused and looked at his hands. They were still shaking. 3 cycles ago, we were kings of the stars. The Catherian Empire ruled over 200 worlds. Our ships were the fastest. Our weapons were the strongest. We had never lost a war. We had never even come close to losing. Veltar's voice grew quieter. Then we found Earth. The council members leaned forward. This was the story they needed to hear. Commander Zeph Call was leading our exploration fleet through the Outer Rim. We were looking for new worlds to add to the Empire. That was how we did things back then. We would find a world, demand they join us, and if they said no, we would make them join us. Veltar rubbed his forehead with one of his hands. Earth was a small blue and green planet. Our sensors showed it had life, but the technology was very basic. They had just started to travel between worlds. Their ships were slow and weak. Their weapons were simple. We thought it would be easy. He looked up at the council. We were so wrong. Admiral Daeho was the leader of their space forces. Commander Sujin was his second in command. When Ambassador Thekmer went to meet with them, he expected them to be afraid. He expected them to fall on their knees and beg for mercy. Veltar shook his head. They did not beg. They did not fall on their knees. Admiral Daeho looked Thekmer right in the eyes and said, "We thank you for your offer, but we must decline. We will need some time to prepare our response." The council members looked confused. Counselor Keth asked, "That does not sound frightening. That sounds polite." "That is what we thought too," Veltar said. Thekmer laughed. He told them they had one day to surrender, or we would take their world by force. Admiral Daeho just nodded and said, "We understand. Thank you for being clear about your intentions." Veltar's voice became very quiet. We thought they were praying. We thought they were crying. We thought they were preparing to give up. We had no idea what they were really doing. He stood up and walked to the small window in the chamber. Outside, the stars looked cold and distant. For 1 full day, the humans were silent. No messages, no attempts to negotiate, no begging for more time. Our sensors showed lots of activity on their world and around their space stations, but we thought they were just panicking. Veltar turned back to face the council. On the second day, Admiral Daeho sent us a message. It was very short. He sighed, "We have considered your offer, and our answer is no. We are ready for whatever comes next." Commander Zeph Call was angry. How dare these primitive beings refuse the mighty Catherian Empire? He ordered the fleet to move toward Earth. We had 50 ships. They had maybe 20. We had weapons that could destroy cities. They had weapons that could barely scratch our shields. Veltar sat back down in his chair. His hands were shaking harder now. The battle should have lasted minutes. It lasted 3 days. He closed his eyes again. The first thing that surprised us was how they fought. Most species try to save their ships and their people. They retreat when things get bad. They surrender when they are losing. Humans did none of these things. Captain Minho was commanding one of their ships called the Indomitable. When our weapons broke through his shields and his ship started to fall apart, he did not retreat. He did not surrender. He turned his ship toward our biggest warship and pushed his engines to maximum power. Veltar opened his eyes and looked directly at Counselor Kef. He rammed us. His ship was dying, his crew was dying, but he used his ship as a weapon. He crashed into our dreadnought at almost light speed. Both ships were destroyed. Everyone died. The council members sat in shocked silence. But that was not the worst part. Veltar continued. The worst part was that Captain Hyjin, who was commanding another human ship called the Resilience, saw what Minho did and immediately tried to do the same thing to another one of our ships. They were using their ships like bullets. They were sacrificing themselves without hesitation. We had never seen anything like it. In our culture, in every culture we knew, ships were valuable. Crews were valuable. You did not throw them away. Veltar stood up again and began pacing around the small room. But humans were different. They saw their ships and their people as tools to win the war. If sacrificing one ship could destroy one of ours, they considered it a good trade. If losing 100 humans could kill 1,000 Catherians, they considered it a victory. By the end of the first day, we had lost 12 ships. They had lost 15. We should have been winning, but somehow it felt like we were losing. Every time we destroyed one of their ships, they made us pay a terrible price for it. Veltar stopped pacing and looked out the window again. Captain Wu Jin was the worst of all. His ship was called the Defiance. It was one of their smallest ships, barely big enough to be called a warship. When our main fleet surrounded him, we expected him to surrender. Instead, he sent us a message. He said, "Tell your families you met humanity today." Then he flew his ship straight into the middle of our formation and somehow made his reactor explode. The explosion was so big, it destroyed 4 of our ships and damaged 6 more. Veltar's voice was barely a whisper now. 1 small human ship, 43 human crew members. They killed over 3,000 Catherians in less than 30 seconds. He turned back to the council. That was when we realized we were not fighting a war. We were fighting a nightmare. These humans did not just want to win. They wanted to make sure that even if they lost, we would never forget the price of fighting them. On the 3rd day, the surviving human ships retreated. Commander Zef Kal declared victory. We had taken the system. We had defeated their fleet. By all the rules of war, we had won. Veltar sat down heavily in his chair. But as our ships moved toward Earth to begin the occupation, Admiral Dayho sent us one final message. He said, "Congratulations on your victory. Now the real war begins." The chamber fell silent. Outside, the stars continued their ancient dance, cold and uncaring. That, Veltar said quietly, was when we learned that defeating humanity in space was not the same as defeating humanity. It was when we learned that humans do not just fight wars. They become war itself. Veltar took a long drink of water before continuing his story. The council members waited patiently, though they could see the fear in his eyes growing stronger. After we defeated their space fleet, Commander Zef Kal was very pleased with himself. He had lost many ships, but he had won. He ordered the invasion of Earth to begin immediately. Veltar set down his cup with shaking hands. We sent down 50,000 troops in the first wave. These were not raw recruits. These were seasoned Catherian warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds. They had the best weapons, the best armor, the best training in the galaxy. General Morthake was in command of the ground forces. He expected the humans to surrender quickly once they saw our superior numbers and equipment. Most species do. When you have lost your space fleet and enemy, soldiers are landing on your world. Continuing the fight is just throwing away lives. Veltar closed his eyes. Humans do not think like most species. The first landing site was near a human city called Sol. Our intelligence said it had 10 million inhabitants. General Northic expected the human government to declare it an open city to save civilian lives. Instead, the humans evacuated most of the civilians and turned the entire city into a fortress. Colonel Tae-1 was commanding the human defense forces in that area. When our dropships landed, his soldiers were not waiting in formation like proper warriors. They were hiding. They were in the buildings, under the streets, on the rooftops. They were everywhere and nowhere. Veltar opened his eyes and looked at the council. Do you know what it is like to fight an enemy you cannot see? Every window could hide a sniper. Every door could hide a bomb. Every street could be a trap. Counselor Kef leaned forward. Surely your superior weapons gave you an advantage? Our weapons were better, yes. Our armor was stronger. Our soldiers were bigger and stronger. But the humans did not fight us face to face. They would attack us and then disappear. They would blow up a building and then vanish into the sewers. They would shoot at us from 100 meters away and then run before we could shoot back. Veltar stood up and began pacing again. Major Young Mi was particularly clever. She would wait until our patrols were walking past human homes, then she would detonate explosives that brought down entire buildings on top of our soldiers. She did not care that she was destroying human homes. She did not care that some humans might still be inside. All she cared about was killing as many of us as possible. But the worst part was not the fighting. The worst part was how the humans used their own people. The council members looked confused. What do you mean? Asked Counselor Zek. They used their civilians as weapons, Veltar said, his voice full of horror. An old human woman would walk up to our checkpoint carrying a basket of food. She would smile and offer to share her food with our soldiers. When they came close to take the food, she would detonate the explosives hidden in the basket. A human child would run up to our vehicles crying, asking for help finding his parents. When our soldiers got out to help him, hidden snipers would shoot them. The child was bait. Veltar sat down heavily. We could not tell who was a fighter and who was not. Every human was potentially dangerous. Every human could be carrying a weapon or a bomb. We started shooting at anyone who came near us. That was exactly what they wanted. When we started killing civilians, the humans used it for propaganda. They showed pictures of dead children and said we were monsters. More humans joined their resistance. More humans started attacking us. Colonel Tae-1 sent us messages on our own communication channels. He would broadcast videos of our dead soldiers and say, "This is what happens to invaders on Earth. Leave now or join them." Veltar rubbed his temples with two of his hands. After 1 week of fighting, we had taken less than half of Seoul. We had lost 8,000 soldiers. The humans had lost maybe 20,000 fighters and civilians, but they did not seem to care about their losses. If anything, losing people made them fight harder. General Northek decided to use heavier weapons. He ordered our ships in orbit to bomb the human positions from space. This should have ended the resistance quickly, but the humans had prepared. For this too, they had built bunkers deep underground. They had hidden supplies and weapons all over the city. When we bombed a building, they would just move to another building. When we bombed a street, they would use the tunnels under the streets. Veltar's voice became very quiet. And then they started doing things that no civilized species would ever do. What things? Counselor Keth asked. They booby-trapped their own dead. When we found human bodies, we would search them for intelligence. The humans knew this, so they would put explosives inside the bodies. When our soldiers moved the corpses, they would explode. They poisoned their own water supplies, so that if we tried to use them, we would get sick. They burned their own food stores so we could not eat them. They destroyed their own hospitals so we could not use them to treat our wounded. Major Young Mi's unit did something that still gives me nightmares. They captured some of our soldiers alive. Instead of killing them quickly, they tortured them and broadcast the sounds on our military frequencies. Our soldiers could hear their comrades screaming in pain. It was psychological warfare designed to break our morale. Veltar stood up and walked to the window again. After 2 weeks, General Morthek realized that taking Seoul was going to cost us more soldiers than we had. He decided to bypass the city and attack softer targets. So we attacked a smaller human town called Bizon. We thought it would be easier. We were wrong again. The humans in Bizon had been watching what happened in Seoul. They had learned from it. Captain Min Ho's brother, Captain Dongmin, was in charge of the defense there. He had turned the entire town into one giant trap. When our forces entered Bizon, everything seemed normal at first. The town appeared to be empty. We thought the humans had fled. Our soldiers spread out to search the buildings. That was when Captain Dongmin triggered his trap. Every major building in the town had been filled with explosives. When he detonated them, the entire center of Bizon collapsed. 3,000 of our soldiers were buried alive. Veltar turned back to face the council, but Captain Dongmin was not finished. As our surviving soldiers tried to dig out their comrades, human fighters emerged from hidden positions all around the town. They had been waiting underground in tunnels and bunkers. The battle for Bizon lasted only 6 hours. When it was over, we had lost 5,000 soldiers. The humans had lost maybe 2,000 fighters and had destroyed their own town. They considered this a great victory. That night, Admiral Daeho sent us another message. He said, "Every town you attack will cost you more than the last. Every city you enter will become your grave. We have 100 cities. How many soldiers do you have?" Veltar sat down and put his head in his hands. We started to realize that the humans were not trying to defeat us in the traditional sense. They were trying to make conquering their world so expensive that we would give up and leave. And it was working. After 3 weeks of fighting, we had taken only 2 cities and several small towns. We had lost over 20,000 soldiers. At this rate, conquering Earth would take years and cost us hundreds of thousands of lives. But Commander Zef Kal was too proud to admit defeat. He ordered more troops sent down from our ships. He demanded that General Morthek stop playing games and crush the human resistance with overwhelming force. That was when we learned that overwhelming force means nothing when your enemy is willing to use any tactic, no matter how horrible, to win. The humans were about to teach us what real warfare looked like. Veltar was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. When he finally spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. The 4th week of the war was when we learned that humans have no limits, no boundaries they will not cross, no lines they will not step over if it means victory. He looked up at the council members. Dr. Kyung-soo was a human scientist working in their biological research center. Before the war, he studied diseases. He was trying to find cures for human illnesses. He was what you would call a healer. When the war started, Dr. Kyung-soo did not pick up a gun. He did not join their army. Instead, he went to his laboratory and began working on something much more dangerous than any weapon. Veltar shuddered. He began working on us. Dr. Kyung-soo had access to Catherian prisoners from the early battles. He studied our biology. He learned how our bodies worked. He discovered our weaknesses. Then he created something that would hunt us specifically. It started in our camp outside Seoul. Soldiers began getting sick with what seemed like a symbol. Flu. They had fevers, body aches, trouble breathing. Our medical staff was not worried at first. The symptoms were mild. But the disease did not stay mild. After 3 days, the fever would spike. After 5 days, our soldiers would start having seizures. After a week, they would die. Veltar's voice cracked. It spread through our entire force like wildfire. Within 2 weeks, 30,000 Catherian soldiers were infected. 20,000 of them died. Counselor Keth gasped. They created a biological weapon? Worse than that, Veltar said. They created a biological weapon that only affected US. Humans could carry the disease without getting sick. They became walking weapons. Every human we captured, every human we tried to help, every human we came into contact with could be carrying death. General Morthic ordered all contact with humans to stop immediately. Our soldiers had to wear full protective suits at all times. We could not eat any food that had been near humans. We could not drink any water the humans might have touched. But it was too late. The disease had already spread to our ships in orbit. Commander Zefkal himself became infected. He died screaming, clawing at his own skin as the fever burned through his brain. Veltar stood up and walked across the room. Dr. Kyung-Soo sent us a message after Commander Zefkal died. He said, "This is just the beginning. We have more. Diseases waiting. Every day you stay on our world, we will release something new. Leave now, or we will make sure none of you ever leave." The new commander, Admiral Kethvar, decided to pull our ground forces back to secure positions. He thought we could wait out the biological attack and then return with better protection. That was when the humans showed us their next horrible surprise. Captain Sang Min was commanding a human ship that had been badly damaged in the first space battle. We thought it was dead, floating in space like a piece of junk. Our sensors showed no life signs, no power, no weapons. But the ship was not dead. Captain Sang Min and his crew were still alive, hiding inside the ship's hull. They had been waiting for 3 weeks, surviving on emergency supplies, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. When Admiral Kethvar's flagship moved close to what he thought was a derelict ship, Captain Sang Min activated a hidden nuclear weapon. The explosion destroyed the flagship and damaged 5 other ships. Veltar turned back to the council. Captain Sang Min and his crew knew they would die in the explosion. They had planned it that way. They had spent 3 weeks waiting to die just so they could take some of us with them. But that was not the end of it. All across the solar system, other dead human ships suddenly came to life. They had all been playing dead, waiting for us to come close. In one day, we lost 16 ships to these ghost attacks. Admiral Kethvar was becoming desperate. He decided to change tactics completely. Instead of trying to occupy human territory, he would simply destroy it from space. He ordered the orbital bombardment of every human city. The humans had been expecting this too. They had moved their important facilities underground or off-world. When we bombed their cities, we killed many civilians, but we did not destroy their ability to fight. Worse, every civilian we killed made the surviving humans angrier. Commander Ba-O-Ra led a group of human fighters who attacked one of our ground bases. They did not try to capture it or hold it. They just wanted to kill as many Catherians as possible before they died. Commander Ba-O-Ra's attack killed 300 of our soldiers, but all 47 humans in her unit died. When we searched the bodies, we found a message from her. It said, "For every human you kill, we will kill 10 Catherians. For every city you destroy, we will destroy 10 of your ships." This is not war anymore. This is extermination. Veltar sat down heavily. That was when we realized what the humans were really doing. They were not trying to win a traditional war. They were trying to make us understand that fighting them would cost more than we could afford. Every victory we achieved came with a price that was higher than the victory was worth. Every human position we captured was booby-trapped. Every human prisoner we took tried to escape and kill guards. Every human city we bombed just made the survivors fight harder. Admiral Kethver decided to try negotiating. He sent a message to Admiral Deho, offering to discuss terms for human surrender. Admiral Deho's response was very simple. He said, "The only terms we will discuss are the terms of your withdrawal from our system. You have 72 hours to begin leaving, or we will show you what real warfare looks like." Admiral Kethver laughed when he received this message. Real warfare? We had been fighting for over a month. We had used our best weapons, our best soldiers, our best tactics. What could the humans possibly do that they had not already done? Veltar looked out the window at the stars. We found out that everything the humans had done so far was just them being polite. They had been holding back, trying to give us a chance to leave with some dignity. When we refused to leave, they stopped being polite. General Hyan Wu was in command of a special human unit that we had never seen before. They called themselves the Last Resort Division. We captured some communications that mentioned them, but we thought it was just propaganda. On the 73rd hour after Admiral Deho's ultimatum, General Hyan Wu's unit boarded one of our cruisers. Not with ships or shuttles. They used personal flight suits to fly through space and cut through the hull with hand tools. 50 humans against a crew of 3,000 Catherians. The humans should have been slaughtered in minutes. Veltar's voice became very quiet. Instead, they slaughtered us. These humans were different from the others we had fought. They did not retreat when wounded. They did not slow down when tired. Some of them kept fighting even after taking injuries that should have killed them immediately. I was on that ship. I saw General Hyan Wu kill 6 Catherian warriors with his bare hands while he was bleeding from dozens of wounds. I saw a human soldier continue shooting at us even after losing an arm. I saw humans use their own bodies as shields to protect their wounded comrades. In 2 hours, 50 humans had killed or captured the entire crew of our cruiser. Then they used our own ship's weapons to attack our fleet from behind. That was when we knew the war was lost. Not because we could not defeat the humans, but because defeating them would require us to become monsters worse than they were. And we were beginning to suspect that was impossible. Veltar was trembling now. The council members could see sweat forming on his gray skin, despite the cool temperature of the room. After General Hyan Wu's attack on our cruiser, everything changed. Admiral Kethver realized that the humans were not going to give up. Ever. He sent a message to the Catherian High Command requesting permission to use our most powerful weapons. The High Command was getting worried. We had been fighting for over a month and had made no real progress. Worse, other species in the galaxy were watching. If the mighty Catherian Empire could not defeat one small world, what did that say about our power? Veltar wiped sweat from his forehead. They gave Admiral Kethver permission to use planet-killer weapons. Planet killers are weapons we had never used in war before. They are meant to destroy entire worlds, to crack planets like eggs and turn them into asteroid fields. They are weapons of absolute last resort. But before Admiral Kethver could use them, the humans did something that shocked us to our core. Engineer Dong Hyan and scientist So Young had been working together in secret since the war began. They had been studying our technology, learning from the weapons we had used against them. In 6 weeks, they had advanced human science by decades. Veltar stood up and began pacing frantically. They built their own planet-killer weapon, but they did not point it at our ships. They pointed it at Earth. The council members gasped. Counselor Keth asked, "They were going to destroy their own world?" General Sung Ho sent us a message. He said, "We know you are preparing to destroy our world. We want you to know that we are prepared to destroy it ourselves rather than let you have it. If you fire your planet killer, we will fire ours first. You will get nothing but space dust." Beltar sat down heavily. They were willing to commit suicide on a planetary scale, rather than surrender. 4 billion humans, all willing to die rather than live under Catherian rule. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was what Admiral Yunji told us next. Admiral Yunji was in command of the human space forces after Admiral Daeho was killed in a bombing attack. She sent us detailed plans of human evacuation. Ships that could carry their entire population to other star systems. She said, "We have already moved our most important people and resources off-world. If you destroy Earth, you will kill mostly civilians and empty cities. But our military, our scientists, our leaders will survive, and they will spend the rest of their lives hunting you across the galaxy." Beltar's hands were shaking violently. Now, she promised us that if we destroyed Earth, humans would never stop fighting us. They would become space nomads, living on ships dedicated to nothing but revenge. They would attack our worlds, our trade routes, our colonies. They would never give up, never negotiate, never forgive. Admiral Kethfer realized he was trapped. If he used the planet killer, he would create an enemy that would haunt the Catherian Empire forever. If he did not use it, he would have to admit defeat to a species that was supposed to be primitive. That was when Dr. Jin-A and General Siok revealed their final weapon. Veltar stood up and walked to the far corner of the room, as if trying to get as far away from the council as possible. Dr. Jin-A had been working with the biological warfare team, but instead of creating a disease that would kill us, she created something much worse. She created a virus that would change how our brains worked. The virus did not kill Catherians who were infected. Instead, it made them afraid. Not just normal afraid, terrified, paralyzed with fear, unable to function. But it was not just any fear. It was specifically fear of humans. Catherians infected with the virus could not look at a human without screaming. They could not hear human voices without having panic attacks. They could not even see pictures of humans without collapsing. General Siok used our own ventilation systems to spread the virus through our ships. Within days, half of our fleet was infected. Thousands of Catherian warriors, veterans of dozens of campaigns, were reduced to whimpering children afraid of their own shadows. Veltar was pressed against the wall now, his voice barely audible. "I was infected. I still am. Do you see how I shake when I talk about humans? Do you see how I cannot sit still? That is what Dr. Ginny's virus does. It makes us remember every terrible thing humans did to us and makes us feel that terror forever." Counselor Keth looked horrified. "That is psychological torture." "It gets worse," Beltar whispered. "The virus is contagious. Infected Catherians spread it to healthy ones just by being near them. Within weeks, our entire species could be infected. We would become a race of cowards, afraid of our own shadows." Dr. Ginny sent us samples of the antidote along with her demands. She would give us the cure if we left human space immediately and never returned. If we refused, she would release the virus on all of our worlds. Admiral Kethfer had no choice. He ordered the full withdrawal of all Catherian forces from the Sol system. We abandoned our equipment, our bases, our wounded. We ran like frightened children. Veltar slid down the wall to sit on the floor. But the humans were not finished with us yet. As our fleet was leaving human space, Captain Chang-Wu and Fleet Admiral Na-Ri launched what they called Operation Homecoming, using technology they had stolen from us and improved with their own innovations. They attacked our retreat. They did not try to destroy all of our ships. That would have been too quick, too clean. Instead, they disabled our engines and weapons, leaving us helpless but alive. Then they broadcasted a message to the entire galaxy. Admiral Nari said, "Let this be a lesson to any species that thinks humans are weak. We did not ask for this war, but we finished it. These Catherian ships are returning home as a warning. Attack humanity at your own risk." The message was broadcast on every communication frequency in the galaxy. Every species heard it. Every government, every military, every trader and explorer now knew that humans were not the helpless primitives they appeared to be. Veltar looked up at the council with eyes full of terror. But the worst humiliation was still to come. When our survivors returned to Catherian space, we brought Dr. Ginny's virus with us. It spread through our population like wildfire. Within months, half of the Catherian Empire was infected with an incurable fear of humans. Our military collapsed. Our government fell into chaos. Our colonies rebelled because they knew we were too afraid to stop them. In 6 months, the greatest empire in the galaxy was reduced to a handful of frightened worlds hiding in the outer rim. And it was all because we made the mistake of thinking that humans were just another primitive species to be conquered. Veltar buried his face in his hands. We learned too late that humans are not just another species. They are something unique in the galaxy. They are the only species that gets stronger when you hurt them. The only species that becomes more dangerous when you threaten them. They are the only species that will destroy themselves rather than surrender. And now they know we exist. Now they know where we are. Every night, I dream that they are coming. For us, every night I wake up screaming because I know that someday they will finish what we started. The war is over. Humanity won, but for us, the nightmare will never end. The chamber fell silent after Veltar finished speaking. The council members sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had heard. Veltar remained huddled in the corner, occasionally glancing at the door as if expecting humans to burst through it at any moment. Finally, Councillor Keth spoke. "What happened after your forces withdrew from human space?" Veltar looked up, his eyes still filled with terror. "We thought it was over. We thought the humans would be satisfied with driving us away. We were wrong again. 3 months after our retreat, our long-range sensors detected human ships entering Catherian space. Not warships, exploration vessels. They were mapping our territory, studying our defenses, learning everything about us. Admiral Chung Wu was leading these scouting missions. When our remaining military commanders asked him what he was doing, he sent a simple message: "We are making sure you never threaten anyone again." Veltar struggled to his feet and returned to his chair. The human ships did not attack us. They did not invade our worlds. They just watched us. Always watching. Always there. Always reminding us that they could destroy us any time they wanted. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was what they did to the rest of the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Nari began contacting other species. Not to threaten them, but to warn them. She shared footage of our battles. She showed them what happened to Catherian forces. She made sure everyone knew that humans were not to be underestimated. Veltar rubbed his temples. Within a year, the entire galactic community had changed. Species that had never spoken to each other before were forming alliances, sharing technology, building defenses. All because they were afraid of what humans might do if they were threatened. The humans had turned the galaxy against us without firing a single shot after the war ended. They had made us into a cautionary tale, a warning about what happens when you attack humanity. Our former allies abandoned us. Our trade partners refused to do business with us. Our colonies declared independence because they did not want to be associated with the species that lost to humans. Admiral Chong Wu sent regular reports to the Galactic Council. He documented our military strength, our population, our resources. He made it clear that humans were keeping track of us, ready to act if we ever threatened anyone again. And came the worst news of all. Veltar stood up and walked to the window again. Outside, the stars seemed to mock him with their cold light. Dr. Jinneh's fear virus had spread further than we thought. It was not just affecting Cytherians anymore. Other species that had been exposed to infected Cytherians were starting to show symptoms. The virus was evolving, adapting to different alien biologies. But it was still specifically triggered by humans. Any species infected with the virus became terrified of humans. Not just afraid, completely, utterly terrified. General Siok sent a message to the Galactic Council explaining what had happened. He offered to share the antidote with any species that needed it, but only if they agreed to certain conditions. Veltar turned back to face the Council. The conditions were simple. Any species that received the antidote had to sign a treaty, promising never to attack humanity or any human-protected world. They had to allow human observers to monitor their military activities. They had to report any aggressive actions by other species to human authorities. The humans had used our own biological weapon to turn the entire galaxy into their intelligence network. Counselor Zek leaned forward. You mean they were controlling other species through fear? Not controlling, Veltar said. Protecting themselves. The humans realized that the galaxy was full of species like us. Species that would see their rapid technological advancement as a threat. Species that would try to destroy them before they became too powerful. So they made sure that anyone who might attack them was too afraid to try. But they were not tyrants about it. Species that signed the protection treaty were treated well. Humans shared technology with them. They helped defend peaceful worlds from aggressive neighbors. They became the galaxy's peacekeepers. Veltar sat down heavily. Do you want to know the most terrifying thing about humans? They kept their word. Every promise they made, they kept. Every threat they issued, they carried out. Every treaty they signed, they honored. Species that worked with humans prospered. Species that opposed them, well, you can see what happened to us. 5 years after the war ended, Captain Wu Jin's daughter, Captain Mi Young, established the first human colony outside their home system. Not through conquest or invasion, but because a species called the Deltans invited them. The Deltans had been attacked by space pirates. Their government asked humanity for help. Captain Mi Young brought a small fleet to Deltan space and destroyed the pirates in 3 days. Then she established a permanent base to protect Deltan trade routes. Within 2 years, a dozen species had requested human protection. Within 5 years, humans had bases in 20 star systems. They had become the galaxy's dominant military power without conquering a single world. Veltar looked directly at each council member. They did it by being so terrifyingly effective in war that no one wanted to fight them, and so honorable in peace that everyone wanted to work with them. Meanwhile, the Cytherian Empire continued to collapse. The fear virus had infected over 60% of our population. Our military was useless because our soldiers could not function around humans, and humans were everywhere now. Our government tried to negotiate with humanity several times. Each time, the human response was the same. When you are no longer a threat to anyone, we will consider opening diplomatic relations. General Sung Ho, who had survived the war, tried to rebuild our military with uninfected Cytherians. But every time they made progress, human observers would report it to the Galactic Council. Other species would pressure us to disarm. We had become prisoners in our own territory, watched and contained by the very species we had tried to conquer. Veltar's voice became very quiet. 10 years after the war, our population had dropped by half. Some died from the effects of the fear virus. Others left Cytherian space to live in exile. Many simply gave up and stopped reproducing because they could not imagine bringing children into a world where humans existed. Admiral Dai-Ho's son, Admiral Jin-Ho, visited our space once. He came in a single ship with a small crew. He wanted to see what had become of us. When our leaders met with him, he said something that I will never forget. He said, "We did not want to destroy you. We wanted you to understand that some fights are not worth starting. We hope that someday, when you have learned this lesson, we can be friends instead of enemies." That was 15 years ago. We are still learning that lesson. Veltar stood up one final time and walked to the center of the room. "You asked me to tell you about the humans. You wanted to know why the Cytherian Empire fell. You wanted to understand what happened in the war. Here is what I learned. Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy. They are not the smartest or the most advanced, but they are the most dangerous because they are the only species that treats war as a last resort and peace as their first choice. When you force them to fight, they do not just try to win. They try to make sure that you never want to fight them again. They try to make the cost of fighting them so high that surrender becomes the only rational choice. And when the fighting is over, they do not seek revenge. They seek security. They want to make sure that what happened to them never happens to anyone else. The Galactic Council has classified human space as a protected zone. No military vessels are allowed within 50 light years of their territory without permission. No aggressive actions against human colonies or allies will be tolerated. Humanity has become the galaxy's immune system, protecting peaceful species from aggressive ones. Veltar walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back at the council. "You want my advice? Do not make the same mistake we did. Do not assume that because humans look like you, because they seem reasonable and peaceful, that they are weak. They are not weak. They are sleeping giants who prefer to sleep. But if you wake them up, if you threaten them or their friends, they will show you what nightmares are made of. I have told you everything I know about the human war front. I have told you why it was a nightmare for us, and why it will be a nightmare for anyone foolish enough to repeat our mistake. Now, if you will excuse me, I need to return to my medical facility. Dr. Genie's virus requires constant treatment, and I have been away too long. The nightmares will be worse tonight, because I have been thinking about humans all day." As Veltar reached the door, he paused one final time. "Oh, and counselors, if you ever meet a human, be polite, be respectful, be friendly, but never, ever make them think you are a threat. Because if you do, you will learn what we learned, that humanity's greatest weapon is not their technology, or their tactics, or their willingness to sacrifice. Their greatest weapon is that when they fight to make sure they never have to fight again, and they are very, very good at it." The door closed behind Veltar with a soft hiss, leaving the council members alone with the terrifying knowledge of what humanity was truly capable of when pushed to war.